It's a childhood dare we've all heard of, but few have the courage to try. Standing in a dark bathroom, staring into a mirror, and chanting her name 3 times seems harmless enough. Until it isn't. For decades, tales of Bloody Mary have terrified those brave or foolish enough to summon her. But for some, it's not just a game. Tonight, we're diving into 3 horrifying stories where this simple challenge turned into a waking nightmare, leaving those involved forever changed. Grab a flashlight and maybe stay away from mirrors as we uncover the sinister secrets of Bloody Mary. I'm also excited to announce that I'm planning a special series featuring your ghost stories. If you've had an experience with the paranormal or something unexplainable, I'd love to hear about it. Let me know in the comments if you'd be interested. If enough people are on board, I'll set up a dedicated email where you can send in your horror stories. Who knows? Your chilling experience might be featured in an upcoming episode of Sinister Secrets. Let's explore the mysteries that haunt us together. The summer of 2007 was supposed to be carefree, filled with sleepovers, snacks, and harmless pranks. For 3 teenage friends, Mia, Sarah, and Lily, a simple sleepover game would mark the beginning of a lifelong nightmare. None of them could have imagined how one childish dare would lead to years of terror. It started on a humid July night in Sarah's family home. The trio was sprawled across the living room floor, surrounded by junk food and horror movie DVDs. As the clock crept past midnight, Lily proposed the idea. "Let's do the Bloody Mary challenge," Sarah groaned, but Mia smirked. "Come on, it's just a silly urban legend," she said. Encouraged by their curiosity and a shared love for the macabre, they grabbed a candle and shuffled into the small, cramped bathroom. The candle's flame flickered as shadows danced on the tiled walls. The air seemed heavier in the confined space, and the girls could feel their own breath bouncing back from the mirror in front of them. Giggling nervously, they linked hands and stared into the glass.
"Bloody Mary,"
Assistant Mia whispered, her voice quivering slightly.
"Bloody Mary."
Sarah followed, tightening her grip on Mia's hand.
"Bloody Mary."
Lily finished, her eyes wide and glued to the mirror. They waited. A few seconds passed and nothing happened. The candle continued to burn, and their reflections stared back at them unchanged. They burst into nervous laughter, teasing each other for being scared. But as Mia turned toward the door, her laughter stopped abruptly. She froze in place, her face pale and her eyes wide.
"Mia, what's wrong?"
Sarah asked, stepping toward her. Mia pointed a trembling finger at the mirror. Her reflection hadn't moved. It stood there, staring at her, with empty, hollow eyes. Slowly, the reflection's mouth curled into a sinister, unnatural smile. The other girls screamed, grabbing Mia and yanking her out of the bathroom. The candle toppled over, plunging the room into darkness as the door slammed shut behind them. Heart racing, Mia tried to laugh it off, convincing herself it was just a trick of the light. But deep down she felt something was wrong. Terribly wrong. That night, long after the others had fallen asleep, Mia woke up screaming. Sarah and Lily rushed to her side, finding her trembling and drenched in sweat. When they pulled back her shirt to check her back, they gasped. Her skin was covered in deep, jagged scratches, as though someone or something had clawed at her in her sleep. Mia swore she had heard whispers in the room before waking up.
"They were coming from the mirror,"
she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Her friends tried to comfort her, insisting it was just a nightmare, but none of them could explain the scratches. Over the next few weeks, Mia's life descended into chaos. Every mirror in her house seemed to crack or shatter without reason. Objects moved on their own, and she constantly felt an icy presence watching her. Late at night, she would hear faint whispers, calling her name, always emanating from reflective surfaces. The final straw came when Mia caught a glimpse of something horrifying in her bedroom mirror. It wasn't her reflection, but the same hollow-eyed figure she had seen that night. Its lips moved silently, mouthing words she couldn't hear, but instinctively feared. Terrified, Mia covered every mirror in her home and refused to be near reflective surfaces. Years later, she still avoids them entirely, convinced that Bloody Mary is waiting on the other side, watching and biding her time. But Mia isn't alone. Across the years, countless others have dared to call out Bloody Mary's name, and some have faced even darker consequences. One such tale involves a pair of college students who decided to film their experience, but what they captured was something no one should ever see. Sometimes curiosity isn't just dangerous, it's a doorway. In 2014, 2 college students learned this the hard way when their quest to debunk an urban legend left them face to face with something far more real than they ever imagined. Ryan and Ethan were college roommates with a shared love for adventure and a growing YouTube channel. Their content revolved around debunking paranormal myths with humour and skepticism. The Bloody Mary legend seemed like the perfect subject for their next video, simple, creepy and guaranteed to draw views. But rather than try it in a dorm bathroom like countless others, Ryan suggested a more dramatic approach, performing the ritual in an abandoned building notorious for its eerie history. The building, a decrepit elementary school on the outskirts of town, had been abandoned for decades after a fire tragically claimed the lives of several students and teachers. Local legends claimed the spirits of the children lingered, and thrill seekers often reported strange whispers and cold spots inside. For Ryan and Ethan, it was the perfect backdrop to make their video unforgettable.
Let's see Bloody Mary can handle this level of production value,
Ryan joked as they parked outside the crumbling structure. With flashlights and their trusty camera in hand, the pair entered the building. The air was damp and carried the smell of mildew and charred wood. Every step they took echoed eerily through the empty halls, and graffiti-covered walls seemed to close in around them. Their destination was a bathroom at the far end of the building, where rumours of ghostly activity were most prominent. The journey there felt like an eternity, with every creak of the floorboards making them second-guess their decision.
Are we seriously doing this?
Ethan asked, his voice wavering despite his usual skepticism.
You're not backing out now, are you?
Ryan teased, though his own nerves were beginning to show. When they finally reached the bathroom, they were greeted by a cracked and grimy mirror hanging precariously above a rusted sink. The room was as haunting as the rest of the building. Peeling paint, shattered tiles, and faint scorch marks on the walls. Ryan set up the camera on a tripod, its red recording light blinking ominously in the dim space. Ethan took a deep breath, picked up the candle they had brought, and lit it.
All right, here goes.
He muttered, standing before the mirror, his face illuminated by the flickering flame. He began the chant.
Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary.
As the final word left his lips, the room fell into an unsettling silence. The sounds of dripping water and creaking floorboards seemed to vanish, replaced by an oppressive stillness. Ryan, watching through the camera's viewfinder, felt a sudden drop in temperature. His breath came out in visible puffs, and the candlelight began to flicker wildly. Then he saw it, or rather he didn't.
Ethan, your reflection.
Ryan whispered, his voice trembling. Ethan turned to look at the mirror and froze. His reflection was gone. The mirror showed only Ryan's reflection standing behind him, but no Ethan. The room seemed to exhale, a low guttural hum, and the air felt crushingly heavy. Ryan grabbed Ethan by the arm and shouted,
"We're leaving, now!"
In their panic, they abandoned the camera and bolted through the dark hallways, their flashlights barely cutting through the oppressive blackness. Once outside, the two gasped for air, their hearts pounding. They didn't speak until they were back in their dorm room hours later, trying to process what had happened. Ryan retrieved the footage from their abandoned camera the next day, expecting to find nothing more than a technical glitch. But when they reviewed the video, what they saw left them shaken. At the moment Ethan's reflection disappeared, a shadowy figure emerged behind him in the mirror. It was tall and pale, with long black hair obscuring its face. As Ethan chanted, the figure tilted its head toward him as if listening intently. And then, just as the chant ended, its head snapped toward the camera, its sunken black eyes staring directly into the lens. Ethan became withdrawn after that night. He started having vivid nightmares of the figure, a pale woman with hollow eyes whispering in his ear, begging him to return to the mirror. The whispers grew louder with each dream, and his nights became unbearable. Within weeks, Ethan dropped out of college and moved across the country, refusing to talk about what had happened. Ryan, however, believes the entity never truly left Ethan. In the years that followed, he would occasionally hear from his former roommate, who spoke of waking up in cold sweats, screaming at unseen shadows. Ryan himself hasn't returned to the building since that night, but he still wonders if Bloody Mary was just the beginning, or if something far older and darker was awakened. But Ryan and Ethan's encounter isn't the only one to end in terror. In our next story, A simple sleepover dare becomes a family's worst nightmare, as a teenage girl finds herself stalked by Bloody Mary, and the terror spreads far beyond the mirror. Sometimes peer pressure pushes us to do things we'd rather avoid. For one high school student in 2019, a harmless dare turned into a horrifying ordeal, one that would leave behind a trail of blood, fear, and unanswered questions. It was a crisp autumn evening when a group of high school students gathered in the empty gym after hours. The fluorescent lights flickered faintly above as they whispered among themselves, their voices bouncing off the cavernous walls. The group's ringleader, Jake, grinned mischievously.
All right, who's brave enough to take on Bloody Mary?
He asked, his challenge hanging heavy in the air. Lauren, a quiet and reserved girl who often avoided the spotlight, shook her head.
I don't think this is a good idea.
She muttered, her unease obvious, but Jake wasn't having it.
Come on, it's just a stupid legend.
He said, laughing.
Unless you're scared.
The others joined in, their teasing pushing Lauren to reluctantly agree. The girls' locker room, dimly lit by flickering emergency lights, was the chosen spot. Its cold, musty air and the eerie hum of silence made it the perfect setting for the dare. With her heart pounding, Lauren grabbed her phone and stepped inside, the door creaking ominously as it closed behind her. Lauren stood in front of the mirror, her reflection barely visible in the dim glow from her phone's flashlight. Her shaky hands held up the camera, recording everything.
Okay.
She whispered to herself, trying to muster some courage. The mirror stared back, unchanging and indifferent.
Bloody Mary.
She said, her voice barely above a whisper.
Bloody Mary.
She repeated, her breath fogging the cold glass.
Bloody Mary.
She said a third time louder now as her fear morphed into defiance. For a moment nothing happened. The locker room remained eerily quiet. Lauren let out a nervous laugh, relief washing over her.
See? Nothing.
She started to say, but then she heard it, a faint dripping sound like water slowly leaking from a faucet. Her eyes darted back to the mirror. At first glance her reflection seemed normal, but as she looked closer, her stomach dropped. Her reflection was smiling, a wide, unnatural grin that didn't match the expression on her own face. The air in the room turned icy cold. Lauren's phone screen flickered and went black, plunging her into darkness. A low, distorted laugh echoed faintly from the shadows. Lauren didn't wait to see what would happen next. She screamed and bolted out of the bathroom, her phone clattering to the floor. When Lauren's friends heard her screams, they rushed into the locker room, only to stop in their tracks. The walls were streaked with what looked like blood, smeared and dripping as though painted by an unseen hand. In the center of the room lay Lauren, unconscious and trembling. They called 911 and paramedics arrived quickly. At the hospital, Lauren was treated for what doctors called a panic attack, but no one could explain the deep, jagged lacerations on her arms. She had no memory of hurting herself and swore she felt something clawing at her as she ran from the mirror. Later, when Lauren retrieved her phone, she found the video of her encounter. The footage ended abruptly after her third chant, but the audio continued. In the silence that followed her scream, a distorted, guttural voice whispered,
You can't leave now.
Lauren transferred schools shortly after the incident, unable to handle the whispers and rumors that followed her, but the locker room's eerie reputation only grew. The janitor, who had worked at the school for decades, swore he started hearing strange noises late at night, faint footsteps, distant laughter, and the unmistakable sound of dripping water, even when all the faucets were off. Over time, students began to avoid the locker room entirely, claiming to feel an oppressive presence when inside. One girl even reported seeing a shadowy figure in the mirror, watching her with a grin that stretched too wide. Lauren's friends never spoke about that night again, but some dares are never truly forgotten, and some doors, once opened, can never be closed. But Lauren's horrifying experience wasn't unique. Urban legends like Bloody Mary have haunted countless people over the years, and some stories are darker than others. As we conclude this chilling journey through the Bloody Mary legend, let's not forget the people behind these haunting tales, the ones who lived through the fear, the trauma, and the lingering questions that remain unanswered. Stories like these are more than just urban legends. They remind us of the fine line between myth and reality, a line we explore here on Sinister Secrets. If you're new to the channel, welcome to a community that dives into the eerie, the unexplained, and the unsettling truths others often avoid. Be sure to hit that subscribe button to join us as we uncover the dark corners of history, horror, and true crime. For those who've been with us from the start, your support is what keeps this journey alive. Together we face the darkness, uncover the mysteries, and search for answers in the shadows. I'd love to hear your thoughts on tonight's stories in the comments below. Do you believe in Bloody Mary, or is it all just coincidence? Share your theories, experiences, or even your own creepy suggestions for future episodes. This channel thrives on your input, and I can't wait to dive into what you have to share. Until we meet again, stay vigilant, stay skeptical, and remember, the shadows aren't always empty. Sometimes, the things you fear most are already watching, and they don't need an invitation to step closer. Thanks for watching. This is Sinister Secrets, where we shine a light on the darkest tales.